What's up, gamers? Welcome to another devlog. I made a bit of a blunder, a bit of a mistake. I miscalculated something pretty critical. A couple videos back, I made an AI system for the enemies in my game. Some freaking sweet AI, very smart behavior, very good boys. I'm looking at you, little mushroom guy. The AI I made is good. I like a lot of things about it, but I made a classic mistake, the kind of thing that you can make pretty easily, where when I was setting up the AI system, I did it like stupid and bad instead of good and smart. The issue with it is I feel like it's actually pretty easy to understand if I just show you what it looks like in editor. So let's throw this up and take a look in here. And bro, look at this. Look at this nightmare spaghetti of nodes. There's like so much shit. Look at this. It's a nightmare. There's so much shit in here. And you know what all of this, like look at, so you can see there's the thing called the fucking state manager in here. I think it's called the state manager. Let me actually check. You can see the thing in here called the state manager, and underneath it I have all of the state executors that I talked about from the previous video. And then each of those state executors has a bunch of nodes, and it's like a complicated mess of behavior, right? You know what this system does? You know what this system is doing? What all these configured nodes cause? It makes Ushroot walk back and forth and tackle Isadora if she gets too close. That's all this shit does. It's for walking back and forth and doing one attack. And it took like this big ass block of state nodes. Even simple, easy to understand behavior is a nightmare to get working. My poor potty mouth getting me in trouble again. So even like a simple set of behaviors like this is extremely convoluted to model. I've alluded to it a couple times while I was working with my new AI system. It's like hard to wrap my head around because you have to set this all up in this very specific way, and all these nodes are a pain to work with. And this is for simple behavior. I showed in the previous, I think the camera video, Runktonk, the enemy that can like charge into the wall, and if he hits the wall, he'll get stunned, like Isadora can dodge it and cause him to get stunned. And then he also has a jumping attack. Bro, look at the states for just making him do that. All this machine does is make him walk back and forth, charge, stun against the wall, and jump. It's just a little bit more complicated than the mushroom guy, and it's so messy. It's such a nightmare. And if that wasn't bad enough, one of the things I wanted from this system was for enemies to be easily configurable. If I put an enemy in a level, I want to be able to say, hey, instead of walking back and forth for 4 seconds, like walk 4 seconds, turn around, walk 4 more seconds, I want him to walk for 3 seconds and then turn around because this platform, I want him to cover a different distance or whatever, you know, whatever configurable behavior I want to exist in the states. It doesn't really work because this is what it looks like in editor. When I drop him into a level, I create this instance of a scene, and you can see you can't edit anything inside of it. And even if you like right click and turn on editable children, which is what Godot lets you do to edit the children of a node, I still can't mess with the state machine. So I have to make it an instance in here, which has a whole other heap of issues that are very technical, and I don't need to bore you with the details of that. It's just suffice it to say, this is not good. It's not easy to work with. Either every Ushroot that behaves a little differently needs to be its own scene, which is like a nightmare to maintain, or every Ushroot in a level is like its own instance, which means any bugs that like get fixed in one don't necessarily get fixed in every other one. It's like, it's not good. It causes so many problems, and it doesn't solve the issue that I wanted my AI system to solve, which was making it easy and simple and straightforward to make these cool enemy behaviors and get them working really quickly. Basically, every enemy right now just has a copy of these nodes from Ushroot so it can walk back and forth and do its basic attack, because I don't want to bother with setting all that other stuff up again, right? It's not good. But that's not to say the system is entirely bad. There's a lot of really good things about the previous AI system. So I think it's going to be important here to separate what's good, what's bad, what do I need to change. So we've already went over what's bad. So what's good about the system? One thing that I really like is the fact that all of the different things that an enemy can do are like compartmentalized inside of the enemy node. We have the state machine, right? Which is how it like knows what it's supposed to do. But then we also have this physics controller object, and the physics controller object that lives inside of the enemy controls its physics. Pretty straightforward, but it's how it knows how to walk back and forth, right? The state machine tells it, hey, walk back and forth, and the physics controller is like, oh, okay, this is how I walk back and forth. The brain thinks I need to jump here. The physics thing knows how to jump, right? The state machine figures out what it wants to do. The physics controller controls how it actually can do it, right? And that works great. Having a physics controller that all the enemies share is really nice, because as long as there's no bugs in the physics controller, there's no bugs in any enemy's physics at all. And if there is a bug with one enemy, if it's not behaving correctly and I fix it, it fixes it for every other enemy who would have also had that same bug. So using the shared physics controller is really, really nice. And I want to like lean into that a little bit more, making it easy to access and change the stuff inside of this physics controller. Before it was a little bit too tied into the state machine. The state machine would like make calls directly and set physics state in a way that wasn't very good. So I want the physics controller that's inside of these enemies to be broken out around into like its own special little baby, you know? Same with like the hitbox and the hurtbox. Here's a great illustration of how nice it is to have these components broken out. Here is the corrupted Ushroot that I showed in the, I think the badge video? Which video did I show this Ushroot in? This isn't important. I'm just gonna make him, I turned off his whole brain so he just sits there idling. Here's what happens if Isadora attacks him without any logic implemented for taking damage at all. There is no concept of a hitbox, a hurtbox, or anything like that. He does not know what that means. And as you can see, he doesn't react to Isadora hitting him at all. And here, all I do, you can watch me do it in editor. I'm gonna drop the enemy hurtbox controller into the enemy node. Just boom, just slap it in there. Don't have to do anything special to set it up. And now when we play the game and I attack the corrupted Ushroot, look, it just works. It's perfect. He has health, he takes damage, he has his frames. The hurtbox controls all of that logic, so I don't need to change anything about it. I don't have to do anything special to get the hurting the enemy working for him. And it's same with the physics controller, right? Just having the physics controller means now he knows how to walk, he knows how to jump, he knows how to have gravity. I made that toggleable for flying enemies because they don't give a fuck about gravity, dude. They got wings! Woo! We have this highly configurable physics controller that we can change all of the details of to get that physics behavior. Then we can have every other component that controls a particular behavior. Enemies need to take damage, there's a hurtbox that controls that. Enemies need to deal damage, there's a hurtbox controller that controls that. Physics controller for controlling the physics. So that stuff is all good, right? The thing we need to figure out is how do we decide what to do? What is the piece of these enemies that like controls their brain? And I was thinking, how can I make a system that's like a configurable, like drag and drop approach that isn't this weird state thing? Because that was the goal. The mistake I made when I was working on this was that I did it like when I was working on Halo Infinite. On Halo Infinite, I would come up with these systems, I would design them, and then I would implement them, and then I would hand them off to a designer that either didn't know how to program or was only like, you know, surface level capability. They knew a little bit, they could do like a little bit of scripting, right? They weren't an experienced programmer. But the thing about this game is I am the designer. And you know what I'm really good at? Programming. That's like my #1 skill. So why would I make a system that relies on no programming when I'm good at programming? It doesn't make any sense. I was designing this as if I was handing it off to someone else to make the game, instead of realizing that this guy right here, this motherfucker's talking to you right now, this is the guy that's making the game. So I should make the system that's easiest for me to use. And what's easiest for me to use is a fucking programming language. That's what I'm good at. So eventually I realized this idea of making a system that exists outside of a programming language and only in like the editor scene and drag and droppable nodes, that's stupid. That's not what I want to do. I just want to quickly program up the state machine for an enemy and then use these cool components to control the individual behaviors. So that's the approach I'm going for. If the root node of the enemy, right, if the top level thing is what controls the enemy brain, then that means I can edit it. Why is that so hard to say? It means that I can change the behavior of an enemy by simply toggling things inside of the root node. I never have to make the children editable. I never have to make it a local instance of the enemy. All the enemies can share this same block of logic underneath themselves that make it really easy for me to change stuff. They can share the same internal workings under the hood, so that the only thing I ever change is their state machine behavior on the top level. And so that's the plan, essentially. I want to take everything I can that's good about the previous system, componentize it, so that I can easily drag and drop that into new enemies, and then program the state machines for the enemies on a case-by-case basis for each enemy at the top level. It should be a pretty simple task, and it should be a lot easier to work with than the previous AI that I wrote. It does mean that any bug that exists in an enemy will only exist in that one enemy, but that's fine, who cares? I'm gonna go try to convert the corrupted Ushroot to use this new system to see if it is better than what I was doing before, see if everything works, and hopefully I'll have an update for you where things went well, and we got him working on the new system, and it's gonna be gravy, baby. It's gonna be all Gucci, baby. All right, what's up? It's been a minute since I recorded because I went through and redid all of the enemies. I had to rewrite all of their AI. They kept the behaviors the same, but changed the way I implemented those behaviors. Maybe the best way to show you the new system is actually with some new enemies. We got 2 more that I can show off. We got Bottle Sprite and we got Tetri. So we can start with Bottle Sprite. Boom, here she is. And we normally don't throw this on there, but we can show like the development process. You can see all the different blockouts for like potentials for what she could look like, and then the details. And the idea for her is that we want the Plague Doctor, who I think might be the next video. We want the Plague Doctor to throw potions at the player, so having an enemy that the Plague Doctor created that also throws potions at the enemy to teach them how that mechanic works before the boss fight made sense to me. The idea behind the bottle sprite is that she'll like just float somewhere in the level and she can throw potions at you. So rather than having her state executor system, the thing that I described before, instead we just have a simple state machine that controls how she handles her different potions. We can set all of the details of which potions she can throw directly from the root node of the character. So you can see here in editor, when I drag the bottle sprite into the scene and click on her to like adjust her settings, all of her AI behaviors, everything that matters for her AI is controllable right from here. You can change which potion she starts with. You can change which potions she has available to her. You can change the order that she throws the potions. So I have sequential and random, where if she has all 3 potions available to her, I've made 3 so far. She has 3 potions available to her. So you can say she only has red, so that's all she throws. Or she has all 3 available, but they go in a specific order. Or she only has these 2 and it randomly chooses one between the 2. You can set her up for whatever situation she needs to be in the level. And so here I can show you, here's her throwing the potions. She has the red potion, which creates some like little fireballs that like bounce in an arc. She has her lightning potion. When she throws it, it just like shoots a little lightning thing out. And she has her poison potion that when she throws it, it creates like a little cloud of poison gas that comes out and hits the player. It's basically just like 3 different projectiles that she can use, where she tosses the potion and then the projectile comes from wherever the potion lands. And this is like a really cool enemy to have like available to me because she has very different projectiles available to her. So depending on where I want to use her in the level, I can do like a lot of different cool stuff. And it's so easy. Let me just show you real quick. I can just drop 3 bottle sprites into the level. And so this is like a perfect example of getting this like different potion behavior, setting it up so that each bottle sprite had access to its own potions. With my previous system would have required like all kinds of details and going into the state machine and turning off individual stuff. But instead now I just control it on the root level. Now I could have made editor scripts that control the actual nodes underneath the player, like have the state executor system I described before, and then have an editor level script that sits on the root node, and you control that editor script and it will like shuffle around the nodes underneath it. And I could have done that, but that feels like adding a level of complication that's not necessary. And all it saves is me having to write new code for new enemies. And writing code is the one piece of this I'm like very experienced with and good at. So I didn't feel a need to avoid writing code. This does mean I need these like bespoke state machines for every enemy. You can see even the bottle sprite has her own state machine right here that controls everything. So I created a base enemy class that has a very like rudimentary state machine on it that has like, you know, idling and moving and turning around, like the very basic states like implemented and ready to go, and has some stuff hooked up that everything needs hooked up. It's very easy to duplicate it and then save it out as the new enemy and then just start adding stuff to that. It does mean if the state machine of one enemy is bugged, it's like a unique bug, but I'm really not worried about that, especially considering how error prone the previous system was. But okay, so that's the bottle sprite. I can show you Tetri. Now Tetri was an enemy that I had been working on the block out for, like the basics of how he should work as an enemy using like the state machine, state executor system I talked about. But I really didn't want to like implement him or make anything more complicated because of the fact that this homie like was so complex to set up with all the nodes. It's like, yeah, it made sense. And once I got all the nodes in there, it's like, yeah, it works, but it's just like so hard to work with. It was such a hassle that I was kind of like pushing him off to make enemies that were easier to make with the new executor system. And that's a pretty bad sign, I think. And so, but with this new system, it's actually like hilariously easy to set him up. And here you can see him, boom, Tetri, he's in the level, I think. I don't know if I actually showed off his art, but we can actually do the same thing we did before, where we can show Tetri, this is what he looks like, and we can show out like the blockout stage and how we got to this Tetri final design, flash that up on the screen. And yeah, and so he's really cool. He has his big shield. The idea is that if the player gets close to him, he can like try to shield to block her sword, and then he can either respond with like attacking her or throwing something at her. And you can see here he is doing that behavior, blocking attacks, throwing his thing to try to hit her, doing his slap attack, like obviously his animations look gorgeous because, I mean, fur is beyond cracked. But the key is he has all these fancy behaviors. And then if we go back into editor and you can watch me placing a Tetri, here I put him down and he has the like unthreatened, threatened. So I called it unthreatened, aware, and threatened, where unthreatened is he doesn't know Isadora exists. Aware is he sees Isadora, but she's not close enough for him to like do something other than maybe throw something at her. That's like a projectile kind of level. And then threatened is when she's close enough that he can actually like hit her and get hit. So he has these 3 different states he can be in the 3 executors I talked about, and he switches between them effortlessly inside of his own brain. And then when I drop him in there, I can just change which states are corresponding to which executors. I made that executor system based on just like hitboxes inside of the enemy, where they have this trigger zone, and once Isadora enters or leaves that trigger zone, it switches which executor is controlling his brain. And all of this is also just built into that base enemy scene, so that whenever I duplicate that out for a new enemy, it has all of the executor level switching available. I can drop new detection zones that add essentially another level of executor, where he can have, right now it's unthreatened, aware, and threatened, but there could be like hyper threatened, where if Isadora is like right next to him, he has a different behavior. There could be detection zones for like directly overhead, where if Isadora is trying to like pogo on someone, trying to bounce off of their head, they can take some different actions to try to deal with her specifically overhead. So I can do whatever I want with the detection zones. I can set up anything I need for that. And honestly, it's just like exactly what I needed for this system. You saw me playing around in editor with Tetri so that I can like change how he works in each individual position. I think I told you I was going to show you how this works with the corrupted Ushroot. So here he is. I can drop him in, and he has the same thing going on, where you can see his unthreatened behavior, where he just like moves back and forth and idles. And then his aware state, where he tries to get directly close enough to her to attack. And then once he's close enough to her to attack, he takes a random action. Like he does one of his attacks randomly. I can trivially change the random attack to a specific one. Let's say this particular corrupted Ushroot somewhere in the level where we want him to tackle, or we want him to shoot a projectile. I can just change that really easily right here, and it works perfectly. And you can see here, if I just change his states to be all idling and then load up in the game, all he does is idle. Whereas before he was like fighting back. So it's so much nicer to work with. It works way better. It's way easier to change enemies on the fly and start plugging them into places and seeing how they work. Because honestly, the reason I even thought I needed to do all this is just because the iteration time on making new enemies and like playing with them in the level was so high. If I wanted to change the behavior of an enemy somewhere in the level, I had to go through all those nodes, and it just made me not even want to work on the level, which is not a good sign, because the actual like level gameplay is like, there are 2 major parts. You play through the level, you fight the bosses, and I really didn't want to do the level stuff. But now that I have this system in, I'll be able to work on environmental hazards, all that good stuff, and maybe get a level developed. But I think the next video is going to be focused on finally making the Plague Doctor boss fight. I've been dancing around it for a while, because the Plague Doctor boss fight was essentially what created this game in the first place. Was I made a Plague Doctor boss fight for a game jam where the theme was a boss. And so yeah, I think it's time to finally really nail that down and see what we got going there. AI is rewritten. And shout out to homie in YouTube land, a guy who leaves me comments on my videos. His name is, I think it's Niels. I don't know how, I'm bad at pronouncing European names. Nils? Is it Nils Muller Cleve? He said, yo, can we actually see you working with the enemies in editor and how you got them set up? So hopefully this was helpful. I think the key takeaway from this, at least for me and for anyone who's watched it at this point, is that if you're working on a game, like build it to your own strengths. It's like, when I was working on Halo, I built stuff to hand off to designers. When I was working on a card game, I built systems for designers who didn't know Unity. They didn't even want to touch Unity, but they wanted to be able to create cards. So I built some external tools for them to make cards that could be imported into Unity, right? But for me, I'm making this in Godot like for myself, right? So all of my tools should be catered to my skill set, right? Why am I building something that I would in theory hand off to someone? And also, if I had handed someone that like state behavior system I made previously, they would have deservedly been able to complain about how hard it was to edit the notes. But thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that good stuff that YouTubers always want you to do, and that you're already aware that YouTubers want you to do. And so what's the point of even asking? Like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Next video probably will be about the Plague Doctor, and then we'll see what comes after that. Maybe a Q&A. Doing a Q&A video at some point would actually lessen the load on what it needs to make one of these videos by quite a lot. So if you have any questions you're dying for an answer for, put them in the comments, baby. Peace out, homies. Up. Yo, 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 yo. I was gonna like freestyle rap, but I don't know how to do that.